Hi everybody, this is the Cricket Badger podcast.
Each badger marks the track with its own scent.
His black legs are short but very powerful for digging. The name badger probably comes from the French word bêcher, meaning digger.
And hello everybody, welcome along Cricket Badger podcast, Gaurav Ayan's YouTube
this
feed
is the
as
Cricket
well.
Badger podcast.
And my music is looping, so we'll stop that again. We don't want two intros, do we? But we have got to, first of all, I guess, congratulate Australia, who have retained the Ashes, despite being absolutely walloped at Old Trafford. They've hidden the pavilion for the last 2 days. And then finally skulked out to do the post-match interviews and then have retained the Ashes. So congratulations, Lucas.
Well, we've retained the Ashes, so that's that. I love the English weather. It's fantastic. So thank you for raining for 2 days. But having said that, series is not over. We've retained the Ashes, which our goal was to do that. We did that last time that we were here. Got battered in that 5th test, if you remember. So hopefully that history does not repeat itself. We can focus on the 5th test and win the series. That's the main objective for this series.
How did you see this test at Old Trafford? That England won the toss, opted to put Australia in. I didn't think Australia got anywhere near what the par score was on that surface. I thought obviously England then BazBalled you into submission.
I thought we were embarrassing, especially with the bowling. If you want to say you got lucky at the rain, I'll cop it. We did. That's the truth. And you hit the nail on the head. We got battered, especially in our bowling. Batting, we had players that made a lot of starts. Labuschagne, even Warner made a start. Smith. Just not going on. It's unlike Australia. Usually with Australia, when they do make their starts, the conversion rates are excellent. So below par with the batting, and then the bowling just being blasted to smithereens. Poor captaincy, poor bowling, poor field settings, just a lot. And I think England, if they would have won this test match, there would have been no complaints of who the better team was. So I think Australia got lucky.
I think the flip side, I mean, there's a lot of English people I've seen on Twitter today. Obviously, been moaning the fact it's been raining. England would have won this test. I don't think there's any doubt about it if there'd been 2 full days to play. But ultimately, 5 test match series, England lost the first 2. They could have quite easily have won the first 2, but they lost the first 2. Once you've gone 2-0 down in a 5 test match series, there is no margin for error when you've got to win the series to take that little earn back. So you can bemoan your luck at Old Trafford if you're English, but maybe looking back at the first 2 tests where it was on a knife edge all the way through, and England maybe made a couple of wrong decisions. I just saw Ben Stokes in the post-match saying he wouldn't change a thing in test matches 1 and 2. I don't know. But anyway, Australia have retained that earn. But there seems to be quite a subdued mood with Australians. There's no crowing at the moment because they know that they've kind of taken it through the back door almost, I guess.
Yeah, and I think during all the talk about this Ashes series is that retaining is not really enough. They retained last time, the first time in 20 years. So they really wanted to win this Ashes series at all costs. So there's not going to be carrying on like there was last time with Tim Payne as the captain, singing songs at 4 a.m. Then getting completely hanged over in the 5th test. That's not going to happen. On Thursday, it starts on Thursday, so a very short turnaround. That's not going to happen. They're going to be very serious. So their main goal was to win this series at all costs. Retain, you've got to retain. but their number one goal was to win the series, and that's yet to be decided. We can win that, win or draw, preferably win. Personally, I don't care. Draw back till day 5, I don't care. But we wanted to win this series as a nation.
I've seen a few people today, Lucas, saying, "Oh, it's a shame after such," because it has been a really good Ashes series. All of the matches. It's almost ironic, actually. The one match that was really one-sided ended up being the one draw. The other three have gone obviously 2-1 to Australia. But I've seen a few comments saying that it's a shame that the oval is going to be a dead rubber. It's far from that, is it? Because the Australians, this set of Australians, none of these guys have actually ever won a series in England. Obviously, Australia have in the past, but the last time Australia won in England was 2001, and England are more than aware of that as well. They don't want to be the team that actually becomes the first English team since 2001 to lose an Ashes series on home soil. So there's a lot to play for at the Oval.
This is far from a dead rubber. No, yeah, okay. England can't win the Ashes. Australia can't lose it. But like I said, they don't want retaining the Ashes is not enough on this tour. There was a clear goal to win this Ashes series, the first time in 20 years. As you mentioned, there's no player that's even seen that. Even players in the commentary booth like Ricky Ponting hasn't seen that. Failed 2 times. So there was a clear goal: win this series. Okay. You've drawn this test match. By the way, England could be up 4-0. It could be up 4-0. Australia could be up 3-0. This has gone either way. This is the only test match so far in the series that's been a clear dominant performance by one team, which is England. The rest have been just could have went either way. So in a way, Australia are pretty lucky that it's not 4-0. Then again, England's pretty lucky it's not 3-0. So it's not a dead rubber, because we want to win this series. Now, I'm sure England want to stop that, as you said. They don't want to be the first English side in 20 years or 20 plus years to have a defeat against Australia on English soil. So this is far from a dead rubber, and it's pretty disappointing that people are calling it a dead rubber. I see where they're coming from, that they can't win the Ashes. But like I said, you don't want that record hanging over you. They want to try to extend that streak, if you want to call that, as long as possible.
I totally agree. There is a lot to play for in that 5th test from both sides of the fence. Just going back to the match then itself, as you said, Australia batting first, inserted, was a real chance. I mean, actually, before that, the selection, Australia's selection, I thought, Lucas, that was a very negative selection. It was a selection that maybe had one eye on the weather, but it was a selection, I believe, that was very much with more than one eye on the draw, thinking we don't want to lose this. If we don't lose this, and we've retained the Ashes, and not playing a spinner, I thought was a very bizarre call. They obviously not got a huge amount of faith in Todd Murphy. They didn't bowl him at Headingley. They didn't play him at Old Trafford, but it did seem to be stacking the batting with Cummins coming in at number 10. Did seem to be a bit like, are we going to bat ourselves to safety?
Well, the longer picture not picking Todd Murphy is that if Nathan Lyon retires anytime soon, we're in huge trouble, because clearly this captain does not trust anyone but Nathan Lyon. He was used poorly in the 3rd test, where he should have bowled on earlier. Then for some reason was bowled when he had no chance of even doing anything except for getting smashed, and then they didn't even pick him. So why would you take a backup spinner if you're not going to play him? So I really feel for Todd Murphy, and the future of spinning in Australia. When Shane Warne retired, we went through 15, 20 spinners. It was a joke. They were literally handing him out, the bag of green outs, to anyone that can actually spin a ball. And that's with this selection, that's kind of like that. And Nathan Lyon isn't going to retire anytime soon. Thank God for that. But it just shows you how important he is to he's the most important bowler. I said this when he got injured. He's the most important bowler because he's irreplaceable. You can replace Cummins to a degree with Nisa, Bowl and Stark. You got reserves, but you can't replace Lyon. He's unreplaceable.
They have massively missed him, haven't they? I mean, you could see that when England were going along over 5 and over, nearly 6 for most of that session. 178 runs in that afternoon session with Zach Crawley and Joe Root batting together. And they desperately needed somebody to throw the ball to, just hold that end up for us. Bowlers 10 overs, go for just 30, just keep it tight. And that's Nathan Lyon's job. And they are massively missing him, aren't they?
Well, if you're a spin bowler and you can't, or any bowler, if you can't take wickets, the next best thing you can do is contain. And Nathan Lyon does that brilliantly. Did that brilliantly in India, where he didn't get wickets, but he was very good economically wise. I think he was good in this Ashes series before he got injured. I think the second Test match where he bowled 15 overs in one day, took 4 wickets. That was absolutely fantastic stuff. You probably won't see that from any other spinner in the world. With all due respect to Ashwin and that. So he's crucial, absolutely crucial to our team. So I'm just a bit shocked that we've got spinners, we've got Shreps and we've got Kuhneman, but they've taken Todd Murphy on the plane. So they're saying, right, you're the second best spinner in this country. So when Nathan Lyon, touch wood, if ever gets injured, you're going to replace him. And they haven't done that. They've gone with Travis Head. Now, I understand why they've gone with Travis Head. Travis Head, you may not know this. People may not know this if they're watching. He is sometimes picked as a frontline spinner in the South Australian team redbacks team. There is games where he has just been bowling 20, 25 overs in a game. So people may not be aware of that. He's no frontline spinner internationally, but he is a frontline spinner sometimes in the Sheffield Shield level. But even he was used poorly in this Test match. Yes, he was getting battered.
I really like Travis Head, but I don't think he's as good as Joe Root in terms of his spinning. And he's certainly not a frontline spinner. And I kind of made that comment on Twitter, and an Australian said to me, "What do you mean we haven't got any spinners? We've got Travis Head, we've got Labuschagne, we've got Smith." Yeah, they're not Shane Warne, Nathan Lyon, are they? By any stretch of the imagination. Even if you added all of their talent together, they don't reach Nathan Lyon and Shane Warne.
Well, we'll put this into perspective. When Steve Smith was picked, he was picked as a spinner. He was gonna be our next Shane Warne. And turns out to be our next Don Bradman. So it's just ridiculous how many spinners we've gone through since Shane Warne. We've found a once in a generation player, Nathan Lyon, with his off spin. And I feel in the bigger picture, when he does retire, I feel like we're going to go down the same path where there's going to be a lot of pain. Where we're picking 15 different spinners down the track.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. So it's sad to see, but like Nathan Lyon said, he isn't going to retire anytime soon. He does want to play the Ashes, which is 3-4 years away. So that's a good sign for Cricket Australia going forward. But it just shows you that when he goes down, that obviously this captain or coach's captain, he is part of the selection. Pat Cummins, they don't trust anyone else but Nathan Lyon, which is a bit disappointing. Why take a bowler to England if you're not going to pick him or play him? That's my question.
I thought England bowled very well in Australia's first innings, but even then I thought that 317 left a lot of runs out there in the middle. Conversely, I thought Australia didn't bowl that well at England, and England made the most of that in making that 592. Obviously, Zach Crawley ended up being man of the match with his 189. Joe Root hit nearly a runnable 100, just fell short. Got an absolute grubber, didn't he? Could do nothing about that. But England batted really well, batted really positively. And Australia, as we've seen, whenever a team goes on the attack, both captains, I think, in this series have lost the plot a little bit in terms of how they actually defend and keep wicket-taking potential. And I saw Ricky Ponting talking. Quite an interesting comment he made about when Ben Stokes goes through the gears, and we saw his 155 at Lords, and he's capable of just batting, and all of a sudden turns it on, bang, sixes all over the place. Johnny Bairstow is a very similar kind of character when it comes to that. He can just go up a gear and just start smoking sixes everywhere. And Ricky Ponting was saying, you go. The challenge, I think, for the fielding captain, whether that's Stokes or Cummins, is to, if the batter's gone into T20 mode, then you've almost got to go into T20 mode with your field setting, because and your captaincy, because you're playing by different rules almost. And England, when kind of the whole point of BazBall, I guess, and I've been quite pleased with England in that I thought there was a lot of talk at the start of the series of what BazBall was going to be and whether it could cope with Australia, etc. And I'd also heard it was either Stokes or McCullum say we're going to push this line. We're not quite sure where this line is in terms of, I guess, sensible into recklessness. And I think they found that line in the first two tests. And I think in Headingley and at Old Trafford, it was a lot more sensible BazBall. They kind of attacked, but with their brain engaged. And we saw Ben Stokes' innings where he defended and played quite sensibly and then went up a gear. But it's hard to... I know you've got a real downer on Pat Cummins, but it's hard to captain in the field when basically BazBall is in full flow and there's a Zach Crawley depositing every other ball into the stands, Roots knocking it around for ones and twos if you set the field too deep. It's very hard to captain against that.
It is hard to captain against that, but what gets me with Pat Cummins, we saw this in the third test to Ben Stokes. We've seen this 4 years ago at Headingley to Ben Stokes. We saw it last test match to Ben Stokes. And now we saw it again to Ben Stokes and again to Johnny Bairstow. For some weird reason, we want to bowl short. I don't understand that. Now, you made a good point. Both of these captains, when the pressure's on, they capitulate, they lose the plot. But when it's all rainbows and unicorns, they seem fine. So that's down to, I don't want to attack. I've done enough attacking of Pat Cummins. I don't want to attack Ben Stokes, but that's a bit in the mind stuff.
I think it's quite not easy. Captaincy isn't easy, full stop. But I think if you're playing regulation Test cricket, the field almost sets itself. And then you can, if you're Ben Stokes and you try and be a bit quirky and have you kind of your horseshoe a field in front of the bat, you can do that because you're a little bit in control in the field and all that kind of stuff. The test for a Test captain is when it goes against the plans that you've got, and you've got to look for different options, and you've got to suddenly Ben Stokes is launching you into the mound stand, or Johnny Bairstow is playing pulls to every other ball. How do you actually counter that? What have you got up your sleeve? How do you encourage them to miss-hit some of these shots? Do you still bowl at the stumps? Do you bowl short? Do you vary it? All of those kind of questions. I don't think either Ben Stokes or Pat Cummins in this series have actually answered those.
Well, let's look at Australia's former captains. Ricky Ponting, backs against the wall. Let me give you an example. Edgbaston 05, backwards against the wall, made an amazing 100. Saved that test match for Australia. Michael Clark, South Africa, I think it was Durban, where he was getting absolutely battered by Morne Morkel. Made an amazing 100 against all odds. This guy, Pat Cummins, he capitulates badly. And he does one or two things. He goes too defensive or he over bowls.
With all due respect, though, you just basically highlighted two batters there for Australia, and you've lauded them for their batting achievements, and then you've criticised Pat Cummins for his captaincy.
But at the end of the day, he is the captain, though. Whether he's a bowler, whether he's a batsman, whether he's an all-rounder, he is the captaincy making those decisions. And by facts, he's capitulating when the going gets tough. Now, I mentioned the other two. Yes, they're batsmen, but they were mentally strong, very mentally strong. Pat Cummins, I don't think is mentally strong. I think Steve Smith is mentally strong and agree. We can bring up the South Africa gate all we want. But I think Steve Smith is a much more stronger character than Pat Cummins. And being a bowler doesn't really help, because if you're a bowler and it doesn't go your way, you kind of have an ego that you want to bowl yourself. You want to get the wicket yourself. And Pat Cummins, I think Pat Cummins this series bowling-wise has been very poor.
Yeah, I think he's had a poor last two test matches, and the danger with the bowler being captain is you either over bowl or under bowl yourself, one of the two.
Well, let me give you an example. Before Pat Cummins was a captain, he was never opening the bowling. It was Stark and Hazelwood. Now, since he's been captain, he's opening the bowling, first change after lunch, damn it, you name it. Now that is being egotistic, whether you like that or not. You know where his wife comes from? No, I do not. I don't know. No, not that one.
She's English. She's a Yorkshire girl.
Oh, she's in English.
So
Okay.
basically, Pat Cummins' children are half English. So basically, if you don't want him, we'll have his kids. We'll have his kids. They'll play for us in the future.
Well, I get let's be honest. Last 2 years, he's had a lot of personal problems. Which is very tragic. What's happened? I don't want to get into them, but I understand that for a degree. He went home during India. Missed the last 2 Test matches. But I just think the last 12 months, his bowling has been very poor, very, very poor. No, that's not to say he'll turn it around. Of course, he can turn it around, but I just don't. I think it's too much with all the personal stuff he's had. I think it's too much for him to be a captain. Now, if he loses this series, if he loses, the game will break loose because there was a clear goal that they want to win the Ashes, and I think they'll go back to Steve Smith. Of course, Cummins will make that call, but I just don't think he's fit as a captain. Ben Stokes, I think Ben Stokes has captained really well. There was an incident in the first Test where he went completely defensive against Lyon and Cummins when they batted.
That's the only complaint I've got against Ben Stokes, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I was dubious, because we talked about it ahead of him being appointed. I wasn't convinced about Ben Stokes being England captain by any means, and massively eat my words because I think he's been absolutely superb. I think that in tandem with Brendan McCullum, with Joe Root, and some of the senior guys in that dressing room, they've really changed. And you can see they're playing for each other. There's a real team bond there. They actually really genuinely celebrate each other's success. You saw, it kind of it predates Ben Stokes, probably almost being born. But Jimmy Anderson coming on and congratulating Stuart Broad for getting his 600th Test wicket. There's a real unity there. They're actually really fighting for each other. And Ben Stokes is pivotal to that. I think as vice captain, he was a very good kind of conduit between the players and Joe Root, who was captain at the time. And since he's taken it on, I think he's led that team brilliantly.
Well, that's it. I think apart from that first Test, I think he's been sensational. Now with the field placements, when he took Khawaja the umbrella field, or the first change of Harry Brook, whether that's a bit of tongue-in-cheek stuff. It worked against Khawaja. I'm not sure about the Harry Brook first change, but that's who he is. And I think under Brendan McCullum, it's almost the best thing that's happened in his Test career in a way.
I almost think though, the quirky field sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes it works because the batter looks up and thinks, what have you seen in my technique that you've set this field for? I don't understand. But I think I would like to see him in the periods where the batting side's on top. And the best example was the chase where Australia got home in the end, and England went deep when it got to being 60 runs required. England went deep, everybody back on the fence, and you felt that they'd almost resigned themselves to it. And Cummins has been the same. It's like, please, batter, can you just hit one in the air so we can catch you, because we don't know how to get you out otherwise. And all of those quirky kind of field settings disappear. I think it's in those situations where you want somebody in a position where it probably is a bit quirky, where you maybe can pick up a wicket and stuff. And I think I thought it was the same under Joe Root, to be honest. England had plan A for traditional Test cricket. There was a plan B, which was either the short ball or going really ultra defensive. There was nothing really in between. There's got to be an in-between field setting and an in-between strategy to kind of try and curb the quick run scoring, but also still give you a chance to take wickets.
Well, it's right. It's either the same with Australia. It's been one thing, or it's either be plan A or plan B. Or sorry, plan A and plan C. There's no plan B. It's either one way or the other.
And there's more than 2 letters in the alphabet.
Yeah, exactly. Under Steve Waugh, under Ricky Ponting, they had a plan Z, for crying out loud. So again, as you said, it is harder when they're playing T20 mode, and Ricky Ponting makes a very good point. You've got to be a T20 captain. And I don't think Pat Cummins has the ability to do that. I don't think at times Stokes hasn't had the ability to do that. But what I loved about Stokes' captaincy is that I know he's injured, but he hasn't over bowled himself. He he's put his ego aside now. I think when he started captaincy,
I don't
we've
think
mentioned
he's been able to, has he, because of the injury?
yeah, true, but
Because there have been
yeah,
times in the past where he's
yeah,
bowled for like
yeah,
18 years. But
yeah,
and he was crying out for
yeah,
in that
yeah,
period. And I
yeah,
must admit, I thought Labuschagne and
yeah,
Mitch Marsh batted brilliantly yesterday.
mm,
The ball wasn't
yeah,
doing anything. The ball had got
mm,
a bit wet and it wasn't moving
mm,
laterally, but they really put their nose over the leather and really dug deep.
mm,
But that passage of play where England weren't really getting the ball to do anything, it was crying out for Ben Stokes to come on and bowl one
yeah,
of those 6-over spells where just by pure force of personality, he finds a way of getting somebody out.
yeah. No, no. Ben Stokes is a terrific bowler. That's don't get me wrong there. We all know what he's capable with the ball, especially reverse swinging. There's no illusion with that. But I think in a way it's been good for England that he hasn't had the ability to overbowl. Now, as you mentioned, there are instances where you probably wish he bowled even 1 over. Obviously, he's carrying a lot of injuries, niggles. That's sadly, depending from an English point of view, sadly hasn't able to bowl. But I think it's been good that he hasn't been able to bowl that many overs, or in fact any. And I think he can just focus on captaincy. I think that's where he holds the edge over Pat Cummins, is that when you're a bowler, you're also captaining as well. Even when you're bowling, you're thinking about captaincy. And that's too. I think it's too much on a play, and I think Ben Stokes not bowling, it's kind of freed him up. Now with the quirky fields, I was the way, because of the quirky fields and what he's done. I thought Harry Brook was a chance to bowl last night. But that's the way he's made cricket think.
I mean, it wasn't until the umpires started talking about bad light being an issue, and we're going to go off Ben, basically, wasn't it? Unless you put your spinners on, and Jerry got spin, and this is one of my frustrations, because I mean Moeen didn't bowl very well yesterday, and from what I understand, he's not intending to go to India. He's just basically answered the SOS call for this Ashes summer, and that's going to be Moeen done for Test cricket. But Rooty got turn. And we're not seeing enough spin to actually see if any of these pitches actually spin or turn. And I was actually on commentary yesterday. I said on the commentary, I'd love to see an over of Moeen Ali just to see if there's any turn out there for him. And it was about 10 overs later, and the umpires forced that change. I'd like to have seen Ben Stokes go for that change a little bit earlier, but I'm kind of picking holes in something which is very, very good, because Ben Stokes, I can't fault his captaincy. In terms of his captaincy, out of 100, he's a 93 or something like that. This series, he's been nobody's perfect. Nobody ever gets that to be 100, and he's as good as near as damn it to being perfect. So, well played to him. We're going to take a short break. We're going to play this advert, and we're going to come back and we're going to talk all about Zach Crawley.
Gentlemen, I want to show you my balls. Look at them, they're silky and smooth. Those are their attributes. I haven't given them names. But for some people, smooth isn't enough. They want smoother. They want flawless. They want transcendent. They want perfection. A surface that's completely without friction. That's why Manscaped created the Ultra Smooth package. For men who like their package, ultra smooth. The exfoliator prepares, the clear gel protects, and the crop shaver perfects. Still going. The crop shaver has 3 precision blades, as well as micro combo bar and extra wide lubrication strips, so your crown jewels won't fear getting nicked. So if you're the kind of guy who wants to be that little bit smoother, go to manscaped.com, and you could have a package as perfect as this.
And welcome back. And thanks to manscaped.com for their continued support of the Cricket Badger podcast. Lucas and James with you, looking back at the 4th Ashes Test. We'll look ahead to the 5th one in a few moments' time as well. But Zach Crawley, a man who we have criticised, a man that we have suggested he got dropped, a man who has flashed at everything outside of his off stump for the last 5 years, edged many of them. And got caught, who has been averaging less than 30, averages less than 30 in first-class cricket, but who England have stuck with. who have seen something who like the way he sets the tone at the top of the order. He plays every single shot in the book, and he plays them all very, very well. He just doesn't always play them to the right balls. And he played an exceptional innings of 189 to really set the tone for England at Old Trafford. I saw a stat, though. I think 70 balls out of the 185 or something he faced were false shots or plays and misses or mistakes, basically, because he does ride his luck. When he's in, there's a kind of a bit of a barroom cricket chat thing where if you could pick anybody in the world to bat for your life, who would you have? If he gets out, you're dead. If he bats for an hour, you're alive. Who would you pick? You'd pick somebody like Joe Root or Kane Williamson or Steve Smith, somebody solid that's got a good defense. Zach Crawley would be. You'd pick Jimmy Anderson ahead of Zach Crawley because Zach Crawley could get out any single ball and you're gone, aren't you? But you can't knock him. Man of the match in this test at Old Trafford, and some of the shots he played were absolutely glorious. It'll go down as one of Ashe's innings that people talk about for a long time. He was fantastic.
Well, I'm sorry to the Crawley fans that want him dropped. That's never going to happen now.
I know he's booked himself in for at least 3 more years.
Yeah. So no, it was you would never predicted that ever. He'd be the last batsman you'd pick. You said someone's going to score 180 in English. You think, Joe Root, Bairstow, Stokes, not Zach Crawley. Fantastic, and like you said, played all the shots in the book with the false shot stuff.
Yeah,
you're right, John.
I mean, you're probably too young, but can you remember Morecambe and Wise? Did that get to Australia, the English comedy duo? And they had the conductor on, Andre Previn, and the joke was that you play all the right notes, just not always in the right order. That's Zach Crawley's batting to me. He plays all the right shots. He's got every shot in the book. He's got a straight bat that comes down half the time, but he doesn't always play them right. It's the shot selection for Zach Crawley. It's going at the ball that's 3 foot outside of his off stump and edging to second slip. And he played a lot of those shots again in that innings at Old Trafford. He just kind of got away with it. You can't take away 189 off somebody. It's fantastic.
Well, that's it. He made the most of it. In Test cricket, you make your own luck. Okay, another day he could have got out 100 times, but luck was with him.
I did think as well, Lucas. Once he got to 100, the next 89 we were almost chanceless. He was absolutely awesome. And I know you can't play somebody and say, well, if he gets to 100 he'll be fine, because that's not how Test cricket works. But that innings, though, I'm hoping that innings, because I've written him off, but there's been instances already. I've said to you on this podcast as we've gone through this summer, I felt that Zach Crawley looked better. He's obviously done a lot of work. He's getting his head closer to the ball. He's moving his head towards the ball. His balance is better at the crease. He's playing the ball under his eyes rather than about 5 foot in front of his face. Because he used to just lunge at the ball, miles ahead of his front pad, whereas now he's kind of letting the ball come to him a little bit more. So there were signs already this summer that he'd done work. And I think I tweeted that actually after the Headingley test, and somebody said, yeah, but look at him, he's still averaging only 25. Well, he's not now. And he's now got the most runs in this Ashes series, and they've obviously seen something in him, and they're going to persevere with him, whether I like it or not. And I thought he was fantastic, and I'm hoping that he will take a lot from that. The only thing is he scored 275 or something against Pakistan about 3 years ago, and then the next 20 innings he hardly got to 20. Hopefully this time he's a little bit older, he's a little bit wiser. He can actually take a lot of confidence from the fact that he's actually bossed an attack containing some of the best seamers in the world. And he can see that the obvious work he's been doing on his technique is actually bearing dividends.
And also in a way, he's been given a lot of chances. So in his mind, he should know that, well, they're going to back me no matter what. I've made this. The only thing Zach Crawley did wrong is not make 200, because damn it, he deserved that. Magnificent innings. But it's a confidence thing, isn't it? And you mentioned this series, he's made a lot of starts in this series. It hasn't been like he's made duck, 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 duck. He's made starts in this series. I think he's made another 50.
I mean, to be honest,
So,
Lucas, if you're going to have an opener who plays at a fast pace, he gets 20s, 30s, 40s, and then when he succeeds, gets 180. You're having him, aren't you?
Yeah, of course. And that's that confidence. If he didn't get those starts and just got belted to an absolute pillar to post, that doesn't happen. What he did this test, but it's a confidence thing. Whether you're keeping, whether you're bowling, whether you're batting, the more you start feeling good about yourself, you think, oh, geez, today's going to be my day. And as you mentioned, when he got past 100, it was an absolute world beater. There's nothing he could have done wrong.
It reminded me, I can remember seeing Johnny Bairstow hit his first 100 for Yorkshire at Trent Bridge. We'll talk a bit about Johnny in a second. And he got to 100, and then the next 100, he got 205, I think, in the end. And he was playing some seasoned, experienced, good county bowlers, and he was just swatting them all over the Trent Bridge as if they did not exist. And Zach Crawley's got that in him. He's able to do that. He's got Cummins, Hazelwood, Stark running in, season campaigners, hundreds and hundreds of test wickets between them, and he's knocking them over long on for 6 without, as if they haven't even, as if there's some club cricketer that's just kind of been pulled in from the street. And
that's being mentally strong. Now, we talked about Pat Cummins, crumbles, and Zach Crawley hasn't crumbled.
No.
He's been a very tough cookie to break. He's been bashed in the past, pillar to post, low scores, but they've kept the faith with him. And as you mentioned, you made that brilliant double 100 against Pakistan, then fell away. I think that this will be a career defining innings for Zach Crawley.
I mean, potentially, England's next Ashes series is down. Well, Australia's next one as well, strangely enough, is down in Australia just over 2 years' time. The one person that Australia have not used the short ball ploy to is Zach Crawley, because A, he's tall, and B, he plays it very, very well. Now, he's a player that if he continues to kind of get to grips with Test cricket and actually is still going in the right direction come 2 and a bit years, could actually score quite a few runs in Australia, I think.
Well, he can, especially with his cover driving, which he was known for this Test match. Australia got stupid with their plans bowling outside off stump, which is only going to feed Crawley even more.
There's two things I want to finish on, two subject matters to finish on before we say goodbye until after the 5th Test. One is Johnny Bairstow and his reaction to the interviews that he had after he got his 99 not out. And the other one is the over 8s. You texted me earlier about over 8s, and the over 8s in this series have been absolutely shocking. And Joe Root's comments on them. But firstly, Johnny Bairstow, and you were talking about, he's another player who played that 99. The reason Johnny Bairstow is getting picked by England above Ben Foakes is because his keeping is adequate when he is fit, and he hasn't been fit, and he's getting fitter. But Ben Foakes can't play an innings like Johnny Bairstow played at Old Trafford. Last summer, Johnny Bairstow was banging the ball all over the place, got loads of runs last summer. When he's in the mood and he's got that red mist and he's banging balls into the over mid-wicket for 6, Ben Foakes can't play innings like that. Ben Foakes might be a superior gloveman, but the overall package, the way that England look at Johnny Bairstow is the overall package, add his personality to his keeping, to his batting, and do the same with Ben Foakes. The total is more if you're adding up Johnny Bairstow's attributes.
Well, it helps if we keep bowling him short every single ball. That helps.
I mean, they were feeding him, weren't they? And he loves that shot.
Yeah. But regardless, no, you're right. Ben Foakes wouldn't have played that innings. I thought from a keeping point of view, Johnny was his best Test of the series. He's getting better
as the summer goes through, and it was a good reminder for him in those interviews. He said, I've not played cricket for 10 months, and I have not kept wicket properly for about 3 years. The only thing that my reaction to that was, And I was, well, why did England pick him then as a keeper at the start? If he wasn't fit enough to keep just yet, that
Yeah.
was kind of the door he left open for the criticism. And it wasn't him that picked himself. Yeah, and if somebody came to you, Lucas, and said, "I want you to keep for Australia next week," you're not going to turn it down, are you? So nothing against Johnny for taking that. I think, but they obviously thought, well, he's fit enough, and we want his batting in there. But I did think that was a bit strange. And he's a belligerent, stubborn little fella. I mean, I know him from my time at Yorkshire, and he's a prickly individual, and you could see him bristling when they're asking him those questions in the press conferences the other day. Well, why didn't somebody talk to me about my injury? Why didn't somebody ask me? And they go down, and he'd said in the Sky interview, people say that I only play better when I've got a point to prove. Well, I don't think I do. And then somebody asked him about it in the press conference. He said, "Well, do you think I do?" And he doesn't think he does. But I think the evidence is to the contrary. I think they say they don't read any of the press and stuff, but Johnny, from what he was saying, he's obviously read quite a lot of comments that have been made about him. And Johnny was bristling. Johnny was on the warpath. Johnny was going out there to prove everybody wrong. And Johnny Bairstow, who is in that frame of mind, is a very, very dangerous beastie. And you're right, his keeping was loads better. And I think, keepers are all rounders. And if your keeping's better and you're taking catches, then your batting's probably going to be better as well, because the kind of two disciplines rub off on each other. And if you're losing confidence in one discipline, it probably rubs off in the other way. And I think that was true earlier on in the season. But as he said, he's only 2 Test matches ago. He scored 78 or something at Lords. So I don't think he's had a bad series. He's obviously missed some chances behind the stumps. And the thing with Johnny, and I love Johnny to bits. I think he's a lovely lad, and I think he's an incredible player. Watching him close up at Yorkshire when he was a kid, I don't think I've ever seen anybody hit the ball harder, and he's obviously proving that now. When he hits that ball, it stays hit. But I do think he does let people get to him a little bit. I don't think the world is out to get Johnny Bairstow. I'm not out to get Johnny Bairstow. I love Johnny Bairstow. I think most people, when they're watching England, love Johnny Bairstow. The world is not out to get you, Johnny. But sometimes people can be critical of you without hating you, without thinking you're a rubbish player. But your keeping wasn't up to scratch in the first 2 Test matches of the series. It simply just was not up to scratch in the first 2 Test matches of this series. There's loads of reasons for that. There's your ankle. There's all sorts of reasons for that. Understand that at all. But if somebody was to, as soon as somebody criticises your keeping in the first 2 Test matches, that doesn't mean that the world's out to get you. It's just a good point, I think. It's just true. It's just good sports commentary that your keeping was not up to scratch. I don't know if you saw that interview, but he was stood next to Kumar Sangakkara, who had done a keeping keeping appraisal on Johnny about 2 Test matches ago, where he slated him. And Johnny was obviously stood next to him. He felt like I was about to punch him. He's obviously bristling, and he's obviously really pissed off, basically, that these people have been saying what they've said about him. But I think, Johnny, you just need to chill a bit, Johnny, because not everybody's out to get you. People love you. People think you're a great player, but you dropped 8 chances in the first 2 Tests. You can't actually say that's great keeping.
No, well, I said this in the first Test. In a way, I'm glad that England stuck with him as a keeping point of view. But we said this in the first Test. He will get better with his keeping as time goes on. And in this 4th Test match, he was fantastic. From a keeping point of view, that catch, I think it was off Broad, where he had to take the ball behind him, where he had to put his arm out, and that ball was behind him. That's from a keeping point of view, that's the hardest catch you can take. Imagine a goalkeeper trying to save a penalty, and he has to put his arm behind his body and then put it out. It's just an insane thing to do.
That catch, Lucas, I felt rubbed off. That was almost responsible for his batting. I think that catch gave him so much self-belief, and the crowd was all behind him, and everybody. It's almost like that catch made everybody forget the fact that he dropped a load earlier on in the summer. I did think, though, I mean, I'd be really interested in your point of view on this, because you're the keeper on here. I think he made that catch look harder than it was, because his feet did not move, and that he caught that ball because he's got great hand-eye, he's got great reflexes, he's got good hands, and he got himself across there and got his hand across there to take it. If he'd made a couple of little dainty steps, he'd have made that catch a lot easier.
Now, yeah, I know what you're referring to. I saw comments on that, and my first reaction was, "What a load of rubbish." Now, I did look at that catch again. Yeah, from a technical point of view, slowing it down, he wasn't perfect. He didn't move his feet. But as long as I've said this from the time of view, as long as you keep your eye on that ball, you'll get there. All right, forget about the feet. You have to look at the ball, and then your feet should move automatically. Now, like I said, yeah, they didn't. So, but he kept his eye on the ball, and it takes a lot of dexterity in your hands to catch a ball like that when it's behind you.
He's just a born sportsman. His dad was a fantastic player. He played all sorts of different sports when he was younger. He's just got that in him. He's just a born sportsman. So things like that, which might not be technically brilliant, he's able to kind of cope with that by being a natural sportsman.
You don't have to be technically brilliant as a keeper to take catches. Right now, I've heard players, wicketkeepers say, "Oh, you got to be. If you're not technically perfect, then you're no good." That's a load of rubbish. That's a load of absolute garbage. You can make technical mistakes, and you can still good. Sarah, I think his name's Sarah from India. He made a lot of mistakes in the Indian series against Australia. There was an incident where Steve Smith was batting and Jadeja was bowling. Now, as a keeper, you get told to rise up with the ball. There was a moment where Saha rose too quickly, but because he kept his eye on the ball, he moved down, which is when you go up and you have to go back down. That's another 10 out of 10 catch. So technically, he made a mistake there, but he caught the catch. So you don't have to be technically perfect as a keeper to take those catches. Now
it's a bit like the one he caught off Joe Root yesterday. He didn't take it clean the first time. He did it with soft hands. So it actually went up in the air, and he caught it second time. So it goes in the court Bairstow, doesn't it?
No, that's exactly right. Soft hands. Now that catch was even more impressive because again he wasn't technically perfect, but because he used such soft hands and let the ball come to him, it lobbed in the air. And I saw people on the say, "Oh well, he almost dropped it." Blah blah blah. His technique's not good. Just a load of rubbish. Absolute load of rubbish.
It's easier to have soft hands though when you are confident and you're relaxed, isn't it? If you are stressed and your arms are stiff because you're thinking, "Oh dear, I don't want to make a mistake here," then that doesn't help you keep him. But he seems to be relaxing behind the stumps now.
I guarantee you, if that was in the first two tests, he would have dropped that. He would have had too much harder hands, and it would have more hate would have on him. But because he took that amazing catch in the first innings, he made that catch look very easily while not being technically perfect. As you said, because of his such soft hands, let the ball coming to him, it just popped up like a lollipop. And I'm in a way, I'm very glad that England, because there was a lot of talk that he wasn't going to keep, but I'm very glad England, from my keeping point of view, not from an Australian point of view, that they stuck with him, and he's the keeper, and he'll like I said, he'll be all right over time, and we've just saw that in this test match. He was brilliant, Johnny Bairstow.
His 99 was fantastic.
Oh yeah,
there's not very few batters in the world that could play test innings like that. Him and Ben Stokes are probably the two in the England team. Zach Crawley, if he plays like he does in that test match. Let's move on then. The final point of discussion for this podcast is the Joe Root comments about playing on until 10 p.m. or whatever. Slow over eights. I'll read out the quote that he did. You sent me this on WhatsApp. Joe Root said, "In England, it doesn't get dark until 10 p.m. He means in the summer because it gets dark about 3 p.m. in the winter. Why not start earlier? Whatever it is, if you need to make overs up, instead of punishing teams for being slow on over eights, can you find other ways of maximizing play and finding chances of getting as much cricket in as possible? Why do you have to have hard and fast rules? Why not play until the overs are done?" What do you think?
I half and half agreed with what he said. Half of that statement I completely agreed. Half I thought it was complete ludicrous. With all due respect, you're not going to play till 10 p.m. You're not going to start a test match every time at 10 a.m. and then finish at 10 p.m. That was ludicrous. But there is one way that the ICC can improve overrates, and they don't even do it. It's by forcing harsher penalties. My point of view in this is that if you're over by one, each time you're over the overrate, the batting team should be rewarded 10 runs. So if you're over 3 overs, 30 runs by 10, 100 runs, trust me, if the ICC deduct that, overrates are going to go down real quick. By letting these play, we're going to find, such and such, we're going to demerit points over World Test Championships. That does nothing. It does absolutely nothing.
Especially
now,
when Usman Khawaja actually gets in touch with the ICC and said, I can't believe you're actually penalising us for overrates. This is a thrilling test series. We're providing loads of entertainment. There's been results in every test so far. And the ICC said, yeah, actually, you got a point, Usman. We'll take away the fines that we've levied already. I mean, ICC, grow a pair. Come on, because it's important. Yeah, it's maybe not the most important thing in the world. There are bigger things in the world, but overrates matter. People pay to watch 90 overs a day. And you are a professional cricketer who is paid to bowl or face 90 overs in a day.
Well, if you cannot bowl 90 overs in a damn day, you deserve harsh penalties. And then, like I said, the ICC just let them off the hook. So what's the point? What's the point of ICC even coming out and saying, well, we'll deduct points here. We're going to suspend your fee. We're going to, half your match fee is going to go. What's the point when a player's going to complain and you agree with him? There's no point. You might as well say, oh well, let's go to 70 overs a day. Hell, why not? There is no reason.
As soon as you allow the hours of play to be extended, all you're doing is penalising the fans. Because the fans have bought the tickets. They might have bought a train ticket with a certain time they have to be back to the station by. Everybody, as I tweeted, everybody's got homes they need to get to at some stage. You can't ask a person to be there all day, from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. Or I know he's probably saying 10 p.m. meaning we could probably pay till 8, but people have to get home. People have kids. People have childcare. People have all sorts of things that are going on around the edges of this match. That don't actually mean that just because Joe Root's happy to be an hour later back to the hotel, it doesn't mean everybody can be an hour later away. It's crazy.
There was a point where Australia bowled 20 overs in 2 hours. That's an absolute disgrace. That's embarrassing.
I saw England fans saying Australia's overrate is awful. They're playing for the draw, but England's overrate was worse. Yeah,
it's an embarrassment. Why can't you bowl 90 overs in a day? I will never ever understand that. I never get that.
The thing is, Lucas, as well, when you see them like yesterday, when they knew there was only a short window because the rain was coming, they were getting through their overs a lot quicker.
Oh, yeah.
They can when they need to, they can. There's it's all right saying we're bowling as fast as we can. No, you're not, because when you are there is an incentive in terms of there's a time window and you need to take 6 wickets, you can get through your overs very quickly.
Well, yeah, exactly. They're bowling like Travis Head. Now, Travis Head goes through his overs tremendously quick. But like I said, if you penalise them 10 runs for every overrate they go over, trust me, overrates are going to go down real quick. But the problem is the ICC, they're not harsh enough. They allow this to happen. So they recently just made a change. Saying now we'll suspend your match fee. Well, they haven't done that because Khawaja just made that ridiculous statement. Well, it's a good series. Why would everyone do? The ICC have come out and agreed. What was the point of even changing in the first place?
The thing is, the entertainment thing is a red herring. When I've moaned about overrates on Twitter recently, somebody said to me, "Yeah, but BazBall, I don't mind going and sitting at Headingley and watching 78 balls overs cricket because it's so entertaining. It's amazing." No. Well, 90 overs is better, isn't it?
Yeah. With all due respect to BazBall,
why don't you have the extra 12 overs of fantastic entertainment you've actually paid for?
And with all due respect, BazBall is not played by every single country.
No.
And this doesn't happen in England. Doesn't happen just in England. It happens in Australia. Happens in India. Happens in Sri Lanka, happens everywhere you go. There's an overrate problem.
Tongue-in-cheek comment. I'll just precursor this with a tongue-in-cheek comment because it's not totally serious. But why don't you get a zookeeper? You know the zookeepers, when they shoot the lion in the backside and it stuns them and they go to sleep for 10 minutes. Every time you go through an hour and you don't reach a certain target in terms of the amount of overs that you've bowled, you lose a couple of fielders. Somebody on top of the stands goes, right, Jack Leach, and Ben Stokes, and they go down. They're asleep for half an hour, and then when they wake up, they're allowed to field again. Yeah, but that tongue-in-cheek in a
no,
joke. There's got to be some kind of penalty.
No, I agree. If that was you're going to do, I completely agree. I don't agree with him shooting, but if you lose fielders, I'm all for that. I'm not against that.
Tell you what, let's lose the stun gun and just allow them to walk off.
Yeah. I completely agree, because when you're behind in the over rate, it's happening in the game. If you go out once the match is over and penalise the match fee, what's the point of that? There's no point in that whatsoever. So if you're going to penalise them, do it when they're actually doing it in a game, and it can affect them in a game. Like I said, 10 runs every time you're over. That will affect the game heavily. Or losing fielders, as you just mentioned. If you lose fielders, that affects the game heavily. Don't understand it.
The cricketer writer, basically, George says that his idea, fans pay for 90 overs. If they only get 80, then you should refund them 10 overs worth of their ticket price. If the administrators have to do that every single day, and that comes out of the players' pockets and the ECB, ICC's pockets, then you'll soon see things change.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
So it does need to be something drastic. Whether it's George's idea, my idea of a stun gun, probably not, or your idea of some kind of penalty, in-game penalties. There does have to be some penalty. Because I say again, everybody that says, "Well, I'm happy to go and watch an exciting day's cricket and see 78 overs." You've paid for 90 exciting overs.
Yeah, in-game.
Cricket's supposed to be exciting, so you've paid for 90 overs. You don't go to the cinema for a 2-hour film and it stop an hour and 50 minutes into it, so you don't find out who done it. You know, I know there isn't always a kind of a climactic scene at the end of a day's play, but you've paid for 90 overs. Get to see them.
Yeah, and you're right. In-game penalty is the only way. There's no point penalising him when the match is over. What's that going to do for the fans? Nothing, because they've missed out on 10, 12 overs. In-game penalty is the only way you'll stop these players from not getting the 90 overs and seeing the crowd, what they pay. Ticket prices are not cheap these days, James. They're expensive.
Mate. The prices at Lords and that, was it 20 quid at Edgbaston I saw? The Lords ones are more expensive than that. It's a lot of money, especially in a time of recession and in the UK where things are expensive and inflation's high. Yeah, money's scarce.
And you can't give the crowd 90 overs. Ridiculous. Absolute ridiculous. Madness. Yeah. ICC, please come down on these players. In-game penalties, please.
I love Rooty. I would back him to the hilt on everything else he ever does. But I think that what you said there is madness. I think players and administrators at the moment are looking for excuses to allow people to bowl, not to bowl the overs required. And it's like that half an hour. Yeah, in the UK, you play through till 6, but then it's half an hour if you haven't actually bowled all the overs. Basically, everybody just looks at that as being, well, we finish at 6:30 then. Because you never get through them. It always is 6:30. It's crazy. They just need to get on with it and play a few more spinners. They can get through the overs a bit quicker. It's not rocket science. You can do it when you need to do it. Anyway, that's enough for now. Enough of our whinging and talking and banging on. We will see each other again after the because as you said at the start, the next test does not start. It's only a couple of days' time, isn't it, before they are at the Oval and going again in the 5th test. Everything to play for. Don't out there consider this to be a dead rubber, because it's far from it.
No.
England don't want to be the first English team to lose on home soil since 2001. And the Aussies are desperate to go back on that plane with a series victory, whether that be 2-1 or 3-1. They'll be very, very happy with that. So looking forward to the Oval. We'll see you after that one with our review. Thank you, Lucas.
No problem. And personally, I can't take another year without winning in England. So I'm going to go absolutely mad if we don't win the next draw. If you want to bat for 5 days, so be it. Hell with the English crowd. Hell with that. Just bat for 5 days, please. Do something so we can win the damn series. So I don't want to be here after this 5th series and say we've retained. Not good enough.
I'm really hoping that England win, and that makes you sad. So I'll be looking forward to that conversation next week, Lucas. Hopefully you lose, and it's 2-2. And by the time we talk again, thank you out there for watching, everybody. Whether it's on Gaurav's YouTube site or whether it's on the Cricket Badger various settings or the podcast later on. Hopefully you've enjoyed the cricket, and we will see you again very soon indeed. Cheers, everybody.